This is Ocean Robbins, and I am so excited to welcome you to day 9 of the Food Revolution Summit. We will be starting our summit finale presentation in about 7 minutes. Our topic today will be how you can transform your life with food. In a few moments, I'll be joined by my dad and colleague, John Robbins, and we're going to share some of our top takeaways and insights. We're going to address some of the questions that have come up during the week. And we're going to give you a take-it-home wrap-up to help you ignite and sustain your food revolution. We'll begin our finale in about 6.5 minutes. Donovan Jenkins said, "Hi, Ocean and John. Thank you so much for providing this summit. I am astounded at the quality of every single interview, and they are all so helpful. I purchased the empowerment package, and I'm so glad I did. I know being able to access these interviews as I lose weight and get healthier will help immeasurably. Thanks to all involved in this mission. What you're doing is so important." Well, Donovan, thank you so much for joining with us in this mission. And yes, I just want to underline that if you feel a hope, an inspiration, a passion, a purpose ignited in you right now, I want you to know that we are with you, standing with you and supporting you in the times of clarity and the times when it might get difficult. And I think that you made a wonderful choice in getting the empowerment package because you're going to have this to return to. So you can keep listening to these interviews on drives, while you're doing laundry, while you're doing dishes, while you're going for runs, whatever it is in your life that gives you space or time. You can just absorb it and it will keep returning you, reigniting you, re-inspiring you. So we're glad. I'm glad that you're going to have us with you and that we're going to be with you. And I thank you so much for putting it into action. We're thrilled and excited to see, and I hope you'll report back next year and let us know how it's gone. Suzanne Bielik said, "I am so thankful for the internet, which has brought us the ability to learn all the information to help us improve our health, and especially thankful to Ocean and John and all the people who have given their time and knowledge to help us put on the right track. I will pass on what I've retained and also link to your summit." Suzanne, thank you. And I'm grateful for the internet too. It's pretty amazing that we can be together right now, all over the world, people from 180 countries participating in this summit, tuning in, learning, engaging, and taking it out, taking it forward, and shifting the way that food is grown and processed and produced and thought about all over the globe. So thank you for being a part of a global groundswell that's shifting the world. Jenny Epp said, "Thank you so much for this amazing Food Revolution Summit. It has propelled me into eating a healthy diet again. In 2007, I was diagnosed with cancer, and with switching to a healthy diet, I and my oncologist were both amazed to see the diet stopping the progression of the cancer. Unfortunately, my life turned upside down in other circumstances and made it impossible at the time for me to continue the diet I needed. My cancer came back. I ended up going through cancer treatment. It's been 5 years since then, and I've been struggling to get off my sugar and processed food craving. I'm so happy to once again be eating a healthy diet, and my body says thank you. This week has been the moment I've been striving over 5 years to achieve. Thank you so much for saving me from my unhealthy chains that had me locked up. It's great to be once again free." Wow, Jenny, thank you for sharing. Thank you for inviting this summit into your life at this moment. And, I'm sorry you've had to go through cancer not just once, but twice. And I'm so glad that we're here with you. And I hope that as you apply this in your life, it's going to set you up for lots of fabulous health for many years to come. Today, we're going to be sharing in the summit finale at the top of the hour, 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 Eastern, 4 p.m. GMT. You're going to hear me and my dad and colleague, million-copy best-selling author and Food Revolution Summit co-host John Robbins. The finale event will go for about an hour. Afterwards, I'll stay on to answer more questions and share some more final wrap-up comments. Throughout this time, you can post your comments, you can share your reactions on the broadcast page. What has this summit meant to you? What does the Food Revolution mean to you? How is this impacting your life? And of course, what are you hearing or learning or discovering that you want to share and broadcast with others? And please do refresh the comments using the button that's provided there so you can see the most recent ones that have been submitted and so that you can engage with others. This is a powerful community. So let's feel that. Let's build that. Let's grow that together, step by step. Let's feel each other because we're part of this global movement, which is such a privilege. We heard from Barbara Ruga, who said, I have truly enjoyed the food revolution. I have come away with many informative and helpful suggestions on maintaining a plant-based lifestyle. God bless. Hooray, Barbara. That's what it's all about. I'm so glad you're getting suggestions and inspiration and ideas to help you apply it. That's why we do it, and you're using it, and that feels so good. Kathy Kashmir said, what a great summit filled with so many takeaways. Thank you, Ocean and John, for the awesome work that you are doing. Thank you, Kathy. We're thrilled you're part of it with us. Faye Kalauris asked a number of questions. She said that the summits have been extremely helpful. And she asked, is frozen food as nutritious as fresh produce, considering so much of produce is harvested before it's ripe? And I will say quickly, Faye, that yes, in general, the studies are very impressive on this, that frozen produce is often picked at the peak of ripeness, and so it can be very nutritious. Now, there's something wonderful about fresh produce sometimes, like fresh blueberries. There's just nothing quite like it, and freezing can change the texture and stuff. But when it comes to nutrition, the vitamins, the minerals, the nutrients are very high in frozen food, and obviously there's a convenience to that. So that can be wonderful. All right, we're ready to get started here. So today's topic is how you can transform your life with food. You're going to hear me and my dad and colleague, John Robbins, in this finale presentation. We'll go for about an hour. Afterwards, I will stay on with you to respond to some final comments and questions, give away more empowerment packages, and deliver your final send-off. We'll begin the 2019 Food Revolution Summit finale in a moment. Welcome to the Food Revolution Summit, where we explore how you can heal your body and your world with food. This is Ocean Robbins, and I'm here now with my dad and colleague, John Robbins. For the last 8 days, you've been hearing him interview some of the top food experts on the planet. And now on this final day of our summit, here we are. I want to begin this final presentation with my profound gratitude to you. I'm so grateful that you're here and that you have chosen to make learning about food and health and being part of the food revolution into a priority in your life. From my heart to yours, thank you. I'm also grateful that I get to be here now and to work with one of my greatest heroes and dearest friends, my dad, John Robbins. He's an inspiration to millions, and his books and work have helped to change the course of food history. He's the multi-million copy best-selling author of Diet for a New America and The Food Revolution. He's co-founder and president of Food Revolution Network. He's inspired millions of people to make food choices that contribute to health, compassion, and integrity. And he's received dozens of awards for his decades of leadership and service. Hopefully, during the course of this summit, through his skillful interviews and the remarkable dialogues he's brought forward with our speakers, you've gotten a chance to see something of how wise and insightful this man is. But one thing you haven't gotten to see is what an amazing dad he is. Working with him is one of the great privileges in my life.
Well, thank you, Ocean. Thank you so much. That's very sweet and kind of you to say. Working with you is truly one of the great privileges of my life. And for those of our participants who may not know, let me share a little bit about my son and colleague, Ocean Robbins. You've gotten to know him a bit through the wonderful presence and the many profound insights he's brought to the summit. So you may already have a sense of what a loving and what a wise man he is. Ocean is co-founder and CEO of Food Revolution Network. As a teen, he founded Youth for Environmental Sanity, or YES, which is a global youth leadership nonprofit that he directed for 20 years. He's served as adjunct professor for Chapman University. He's spoken in person to hundreds of thousands of people from more than 65 nations. And he's written a fabulous and now best-selling book titled 31 Day Food Revolution, heal your body, feel great, and transform your world.
I'm 45. My dad is 71. And we see the world from different perspectives. But we are, like you and everybody else alive, getting older every single day. And by the way, my dad is stupendously fit. In fact, at the age of 71, he's more flexible than he was in his 20s. And he's accomplishing things at the gym that many strong men of any age would find impossible. And that's really the kind of man he is. He's always liked to take on challenges and live fully into his potential. He had polio when he was 5, but he went on as an adult to become a marathon runner and a triathlete. In light of his inspiring example and his decades of research, I want to ask my dad something that a lot of people have been wondering about as we've moved through this summit. What's important for people to know about how their nutritional needs might change as the years go by? Are there any secrets or keys that aren't well known to vibrant and healthy aging?
Well, thank you for those questions, Ocean. They're important. The number of senior citizens are growing rapidly. Today, 1 in 8 Americans is over 60. 10 years from now, though, 1 in 5 will be over 65. And as people get older, their nutritional needs do change somewhat. For example, once you reach 60, your protein needs increase by about 10 or 20%. And once you reach that age, it becomes even more important to get your protein from plant sources, such as beans and split peas and other legumes, rather than from animal sources.
Why is that?
Because many studies have shown that avoiding meat reduces your risk not only of heart disease and not only of cancer, but also of Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. Compared to the needs of younger adults, seniors need fewer calories, but more calcium, vitamins D and B12, and as I just mentioned, some additional protein. The needs for other nutrients stay about the same, with the exception of iron. Postmenopausal women need much less iron than women in their menstruating years. And even though the recommended amount of zinc doesn't change as you age, its importance does increase.
I'd actually like to go over these nutrients in more detail because they are on a lot of people's minds. And nobody wants to be deficient in important nutrients. So we were just hearing about zinc. Let's start there. Why is it important?
Okay, zinc is important in older people because insufficient zinc can cause poor wound healing, dermatitis, reduced immune function, and can impair the ability to taste, which can lead to a loss of appetite. When older people who are zinc deficient start eating more zinc-rich foods, they often find their ability to taste returning and their dermatitis healing and many other benefits happening.
So then, are you suggesting that we take zinc supplements?
Not really. Zinc supplements can help in some cases, but they can also interfere with the absorption of other minerals. So zinc-rich foods should always be the first option.
One thing that's pretty high in zinc is red meat.
Yes, but eating meat, and particularly red meat, raises the risk for heart disease and cancer and dementia. So it's probably not the best way to get the zinc you need. A healthier way is to get your zinc from legumes like chickpeas and lentils or split peas and beans. These all contain substantial amounts of zinc. And if you soak your legumes before cooking them, this actually increases the bioavailability of the zinc and other minerals in them. Seeds and nuts are also excellent sources of zinc, especially hemp seeds and sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds and sesame seeds and peanuts and almonds. But of all the nuts, cashews are the highest in zinc.
Another point of concern for everyone, but one that becomes more important with age, is bone health. Broken bones are a major health hazard for the elderly, and they're one of the most common reasons that people have to move into assisted care facilities. So let me ask you an unusual question here. If for some reason someone wanted to guarantee that they'd have weak bones in their senior years, how would they go about doing that?
Well, if that was your goal, then throughout your life, you'd want to drink alcohol excessively. That would pretty well guarantee it. Don't exercise much, eat plenty of meat, and drink lots of sweet carbonated beverages. That would pretty well guarantee that you'd have weak bones that are prone to fracture. But it's really important to understand that even if that is how you've lived and what you've eaten, No matter how unhealthy your lifestyle has been in the past, your body still has amazing powers to recuperate and to recover and to thrive.
It really does. And there are some specific nutrients that you need in order to have strong bones and to set your body up so it can thrive. Calcium and vitamin D are both critical for bone health. For people older than 50, the recommended intake for calcium increases from about 1,000 to about 1,200 milligrams per day. And many experts say that it should actually be increased for people older than 65, perhaps to 1,500 milligrams per day, because the body's ability to absorb this mineral declines over the years. So, what would you say are the best sources of calcium for older people?
You're right. The body's ability to absorb calcium does decline over the years. And as you get older, it's very important to eat dark green leafy veggies to get your calcium. They are the fabulous sources of calcium, particularly collard greens and kale, mustard greens, broccoli, and arugula. Those are the vegetables that you should be eating lots of to get plenty of calcium and other phytonutrients that are essential to health.
I feel like I've heard about those greens a few times before. They come
Yes,
up time and again.
they do.
They kind of pack a punch, don't they? Now let's talk about vitamin D. Of course, it's sometimes called the sunshine vitamin because our bodies make it in response to exposure to the sun. But most of us, especially if we live in northern climates, don't get nearly enough sun exposure for optimal vitamin D levels. And vitamin D is critical for bone health because it's needed for our bodies to absorb calcium. It also plays pivotal roles in immune function and dental health, both of which are very important, especially for older people. So, how much vitamin D should we be getting?
For people 70 and older, the official RDA for vitamin D increases from 15 micrograms a day to 20. And there's a reason for this increase. As we age, the skin's production of vitamin D when exposed to sunlight drops, and vitamin D production in the livers and in the kidneys becomes less efficient. So by the age of 70, the body has only about 25% of the capacity to make vitamin D than it had at age 20. This is why many experts suggest that as we get older, we should be getting at least 2,000 IUs of vitamin D3 per day. And some say we should be getting even more. I'm 71, as you mentioned. I take 5,000 IUs of vitamin D3 a day in the winter and 2,000 a day in the summer.
You can get your vitamin D level measured with a simple blood test. For optimal bone health, what do you think is the ideal level of vitamin D that you might want to find in such a test?
The Vitamin D Council says that the ideal level should be between 40 and 80 nanograms per milliliter. Lower levels of vitamin D are a problem because they predispose people not only to bone loss and osteoporosis, but also to weight gain, impaired immune response, cognitive impairment, and many other problems.
Got it. What about vitamin B12?
Well, having enough vitamin B12 in your body is extremely important as you age for many reasons. Because as you get older, your ability to absorb B12 from foods decreases substantially, which means that all older people, vegans and meat eaters alike, need to take supplementary B12 in order to be sure to achieve optimal status. Being deficient in B12 is a serious risk factor for Alzheimer's and other dementias.
Now, you're saying that the need for older people to take supplementary B12 applies to meat eaters and vegans alike. A lot of people would find that surprising, considering there is B12 in almost all animal products, but most plant foods have zero.
Yes, it may seem surprising, but it's true. By the age of 50, about 30% of all people are unable to absorb vitamin B12 from the animal products they might eat. And that percentage rises as people reach their 60s and rises even more as we reach our 70s. And this is why the Institute of Medicine strongly recommends that everyone over the age of 50, meat eaters and vegans alike, consume foods fortified with vitamin B12 and or take supplements containing B12.
So then, how much B12 should we be taking?
Most experts suggest that those aged 65 and older should take at least 500 micrograms of vitamin B12 per day, but many folks do better with 1,000 micrograms per day.
Are there any other nutrients that you think older people need to be particularly thoughtful about?
Yes, there are many people who, as they age, have problems with constipation. Getting enough fiber, staying hydrated, and getting enough exercise are keys here. It's a real shame that less than 5% of the US population gets the recommended amount of fiber. In fact, it could well be the number one nutrient that the most people are deficient in. Fiber keeps things moving, and it's linked to reduced risk for all kinds of intestinal diseases, including colorectal cancer, as well as constipation. Fiber also helps to maintain steady blood glucose levels, so you can sustain your energy between meals. And it provides food for the good bacteria in your gut.
So let's be clear here. There is no fiber in any animal product. There's very little in refined and processed foods. And the best sources of fiber are going to be whole plant foods.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And legumes are a particularly great source of healthy fiber, as well as healthy protein and a wide variety of vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients. There was a very large international study of people aged 70 and older, and it found that consumption of legumes was the most important dietary predictor for survival in people of all ethnicities.
Wow. You mentioned hydration, which is important for everyone. Does it become more important with age?
Yes, it does. At the age of 70, the average person has just 30% of the taste buds that they had as a young adult. And this loss of taste may lead older people to use excessive amounts of salt to flavor their foods. This isn't a good thing to do, though, because excess sodium increases the risk of high blood pressure and contributes to heart disease and stroke and kidney disease. A better idea is to flavor foods with herbs and spices and maybe lemon juice. And an even better idea is to preserve your taste buds by eating a healthful diet and getting regular exercise throughout your life. Many of the problems that older people typically experience are the result of how they've lived in their earlier years. If you've spent your adult years being mostly sedentary and eating whatever, you've got some work to do as you get older to recover from the damage that's been done. But it's more than possible. If you eat a whole foods, plant-powered diet and you get off your butt, you'll be amazed at how much better you'll feel and at how much better you'll look.
I'm finding it fascinating here. I've actually never heard before that elderly people have a reduction in their taste buds typically. And I'm thinking how many people kind of live to eat. And I'm thinking about how if you do that, you actually lose that one source of pleasure that you've focused on. But when you eat to live, then you preserve, vitality in every cell of your body. You have more pleasure, more aliveness throughout your body, and even in your taste buds.
Indeed, indeed.
You've mentioned the importance of regular exercise for older people a number of times. Can you explain why this is so significant?
I can. It's hard to exaggerate the importance and the benefits of exercise as we age. Loss of muscle mass and strength sets in motion a cascade of unfortunate consequences, including the worsening of diseases, increased disability, and cognitive impairment. Sadly, less than 5% of adults today get even 30 minutes of daily physical activity, and that, unfortunately small percentage, actually declines even further as people get older. But maintaining fitness may be as much a key to wellness in our later years as is eating healthfully. And even moderate amounts of exercise are really quite helpful.
A lot of people believe that vigorous exercise might be okay for younger folks, but that it can actually be dangerous for people who get over the age of about 50.
Yes, many people do believe that. And if someone is particularly frail, they need to be careful. But that belief in general is not true.
How do you know that?
Well, there was a landmark piece of research called the College Alumni Health Study that put that idea to rest forever. The college study, as it's typically referred to, is one of the largest data sets ever compiled on the subject of activity, health, and longevity. It represents more than 2 million person years of observation.
That is a huge study.
It really is. And the data from this study, and from others like it, clearly show that if you become and remain physically active, you'll live longer, your bones will be stronger, you'll have less disease, fewer aches and pains, and a higher quality of life. And the college study also provided the heartening news that it's never too late to change from a sedentary to an active lifestyle, nor to benefit from that change. This is one of many studies that demonstrate conclusively that if you become active and remain active, you'll not only live longer, you'll live better, you'll look better, you'll feel better about yourself, you'll have more vitality, you'll think more clearly, you'll sleep better, you'll function better, you'll be more productive and creative, and you'll have more joy in your life.
That sounds pretty good to me. Now I want to shift gears a little bit here. I want to say something directly to our participants now, and it's this. If you feel a spark of hope or possibility alive right now, I want to honor it. I want to celebrate it. And I want to support you in bringing it forward in your life. What we're learning in this summit is real. It's rooted in science, it's practical, it's practicable, and it can change your life. Sometimes you'll find that when you're true to your integrity, it sends out ripples to others as well. One of our summit participants is named Ginny. Ginny's from Colorado, and she recently lost 65 pounds after giving up sugar, flour, and alcohol. But she didn't always receive support from her colleagues. At one point, she was working with a nurse who was battling weight issues by drinking meal replacement shakes. The nurse asked about Ginny's approach and would often try to tempt her with whatever sweet treat was available on the unit for staff. One day, there was a beautiful box of chocolates, and the nurse offered Ginny one. Ginny said, "No, thank you." Her colleague said, "Not even one?" Ginny held up her fingers in a zero sign with a smile and said, "I will have 0, thank you." The nurse seemed kind of taken aback and said, "Wow, so that's why you're losing weight." It turns out that the nurse was impressed with Ginny's determination because later that afternoon, Ginny overheard the nurse telling the story to other people and making it clear that she had been moved by Ginny's resolve. The truth is, you never know the lives you may be touching when you choose to be true to your own values.
That's true. You never know. I think a lot of us are looking for ways that we can be true to our values without alienating the people we love and depend upon.
Yeah.
Ginny's nurse friend responded favorably and was inspired when Ginny declined to eat a sweet dessert. But not everyone responds that way. I want to have a relationship with food that lets me be passionate about what I believe and helps me to live it fully, while also allowing me to have love and respect for others who make different choices than I do. Of course, that can be tricky.
Yeah, it can. But it is important. We've all got people in our lives who eat differently than we do and think differently, for that matter, sometimes very differently. How we relate to those differences says a whole lot about who we are as human beings and also has a tremendous impact on the nature of the relationships that we develop.
It does. It really does. And speaking of the relationships we have with people who are different from us, Ocean, your twin sons have stunningly unique brains. They don't think or experience the world in the same way that most people do. Would you be willing to share with us something of what being their dad has taught you and how that might be useful to the rest of us as we seek to live healthy lives in a society that often pushes us hard in another direction?
Oh, yeah, I'd love to. So a little bit of context here. My wife, Phoenix, and I are parents of adorable, love-filled 18-year-old identical twins. We cherish them with all our hearts. And they were born extremely premature. And as they grew older, it became clear that they were autistic. One of our sons' names is River. In his first 10 years of life, River never made real eye contact with me or with hardly anyone else. And I thought I would never get the simple experience of just looking into my son's eyes and feeling a connection. And that felt like a deep loss. But then we discovered an approach called Sunrise. It's a way of approaching autism that works like this. Instead of trying to pull or coax people with autism into our world, the first step is to learn to join them in their world. If we can make contact on their terms, the theory goes, we can befriend them. We can establish a rapport. And then in time, we can show them the doorway out into our world. That's the theory. But as anyone who's worked closely with children with autism knows, even the best theories can sometimes fail. In our case, here's what happened. One day when River was 11, I decided to have some special time with him. I was determined to put the sunrise approach into action. He was sitting in his room doing one of his favorite things at the time, which was to stare off into space, chewing on one of the feet of a Barbie doll. Now, on this day, I was committed to joining him, to enter his world as much as I could in order to make contact. So instead of worrying about the fact that his Barbie was probably made in China and wondering what toxins might be leaching into his body from the plastics in it, or wondering how my kid would ever have a dating life if he chewed on Barbie feet all the time and yanking it out of his mouth in frustration, I decided to take a different approach and to join him. So I sat across the room from River and I picked up another Barbie and started to chew on its foot. I went from seeing River's behavior as pathological to seeing it as playful, and I joined him in it. And I'll be honest, I was actually kind of getting into the silliness of it all. And then something amazing happened. River came out of his chewing trance enough to look at me and grin. I could almost hear him thinking, oh my God, there is intelligent life on this planet. And suddenly, for the first time in his life, we were looking into each other's eyes. My heart was melting, and then, after about a minute, River gestured for me to come closer. It turned out his Barbie had 2 feet. He was inviting me to chew the other foot of his Barbie. So now here I was, 3 inches from River's face, beaming into his eyes, chewing on his Barbie's other foot. There was a tear rolling down my cheek, and I'll tell you, it was one of the happiest moments of my life. Now, since then, River's grown up in many ways. He's 18 now, and he doesn't chew on Barbie feet anymore. And we have eye contact a lot. But I'll never forget that moment, because for me, it was a moment of first connection with my son.
That's such a beautiful story. And as your father and as River's grandfather, I have immense appreciation for how you've created a relationship with him and also with his equally unique brother, Bodhi. What I want to ask you, Ocean, is this. How do you see this relating to the food revolution and to the challenges that many of us face in trying to make healthy choices in an often toxic world?
Well, I'm sure you've noticed people don't always behave, think, or eat in exactly the way that you or I might like them to. My tendency might be to cast judgment on them, to take their inventory and blame them. But does that ever create connection? I think we all know the answer. It doesn't. And there's a reason it doesn't. Dr. Martin Luther King once said, "You have no moral authority with those who can feel your underlying contempt." When we judge people, when we pathologize them, we lose moral standing in the relationship. My son River taught me a profound lesson the day that we chewed on Barbie feet together. When we're willing to engage with people, however different from us they may be, in a spirit of curiosity and caring, sometimes relationships can be formed. Then there's a little less separation and isolation in our world. And sometimes then changes become possible that we couldn't have previously imagined.
That is true. And I've learned so much from watching the father that you are, Ocean. And I'm so moved by how you use everything in your life, including the most difficult and challenging situations, as opportunities to grow your heart and your wisdom. And I want to ask you, is there a distinction between the kind of joining that you just talked about making with your son River and the kind of joining that would mean compromising your core values?
Oh, absolutely, there is. There's a big difference between maintaining positive and constructive connection with someone on the one hand and joining them in dangerous behaviors on the other. If someone you love is downing Doritos or vodka, or for that matter, shooting up with heroin, you may not want to join them in what they're doing. The point isn't to join people in destructive or unhealthy behaviors. The point is to make our own choices with passion and purpose, to be as true to our values as we possibly can without closing our hearts or losing our connection to people who make different choices. Now, for me, one of my core values is connection with my son. And he's taught me something profound about connection with other people too. The way I see it, if we want to change the world, we're going to need to interact in a positive way with people who don't think or act the same way that we do. When it comes to food, there are some pretty profound conflicts going on around us. They can break apart friendships, even families. For example, some people believe that humans are naturally omnivorous and that to omit animal products from our diets is actually morally wrong. One best selling natural health author went so far as to say that for pregnant women to be vegan was a form of child abuse and should be punished accordingly. This, despite the fact that there are countless vegan and plant based mothers who are going about it intelligently and conscientiously, and whose little ones or children are thriving. And then on the other hand, some vegans go so far as to say that meat is murder, and that murder of animals should be punished in the same way that we might punish murder of humans. Now, whatever you might or might not think about these particular perspectives, I think they highlight how differently some people can see the world. And some of the conversations can become heated. Ultimately, what I think we need isn't regular inspections from the food police. What I think we need is to discover the joys and beauties and profound healing powers of whatever is the optimal diet for each of us.
And that brings up an important point. What's optimal for you will change over the course of your life as you go through different life stages and experience different situations and challenges. The diet that's best for you will change over time, depending on your health history, your age, the kind of work you do, your environment, your ethics, where you live, what season it is, and a bunch of other factors.
Yeah.
That's why I'm interested in helping each person to attune to their own body wisdom. You are the only you on the planet. Now, we know that a whole foods, plant-centered diet that's rich in vegetables can do wonders for the health of billions of people. And we also know that there's no one-size-fits-all diet that in every single detail is optimal for everyone. Now is the time to become ever more the author of your own food choices, informed by the data, informed by the best research studies, informed by what we know collectively, but also listening to what you know personally, that only you can know about your own real-life experience.
Yes. And, while it's profoundly true that each of us is unique, one thing that's pretty well universal is that the food you eat really matters. To a tremendous extent, it shapes your destiny. This can be hard to fully grasp when you live in a society where it's increasingly considered normal to be obese. We think it's normal to have 14 million people dying of heart disease every year, for half of our elderly to have to die with dementia, and for aging to be some kind of an inevitable one-way street towards more and more pain and deterioration. But as we have seen in this summit, as so many medical studies are showing us, chronic illness might be typical, but it doesn't have to be normal. And it also doesn't have to be your fate.
No, it really does not. The vast majority of us can benefit greatly from a diet that's low in sugar and processed junk, that includes little or no animal products, especially ones that come from factory farms, and that's high in fruits and vegetables, seeds and nuts, beans and other legumes, and in some cases, whole grains. In fact, when I look at the data, coming from more than 10,000 studies that have been published in peer-reviewed medical journals, my jaw kind of drops to take in the immensity of the healing that we now know is possible.
Some people ask me if it's too late for them. After a lifetime of bad habits, does it matter what you eat? And I say yes, it always matters. And in fact, the worse your habits have been, then in some ways, the more you might have to gain from making a positive change. The human body has an extraordinary capacity to heal and to regenerate. When you give your body the right fuel and bring your choices into alignment with your well-being, it's actually incredible how quickly your body can recover and can renew.
It is. It is incredible. And sometimes when I look at the extraordinary healing power our bodies contain and possess, and the stunning wisdom embedded in the design of life, I'm filled with awe. There's a word grace. It gets used a lot in different spiritual and religious traditions. The song Amazing Grace is an example, giving thanks to a grace that saved a wretch like me.
Yeah, I love that song.
There's a remarkable medical doctor and scientist named Zach Bush who's brought the concept of grace into medical science. He says that grace in the context of health is to heal faster than you injure. And that's what we constantly see in our work. When you feed your body with the nutrients it really needs, and when you stop pummeling it with pseudo foods and junk foods, when you stop eating cheap, tasty, unhealthy food-like substances. When you start eating lots and lots of fresh veggies and fruits, and when you fuel your body in an optimal way with a whole foods plant-powered diet, you start to heal faster than you injure. And then all kinds of diseases can be reversed because the recovery is now happening faster than the damage. Your healing powers are magnified. And this is a form of grace because then what we sometimes call miracles happen. Spontaneous remissions occur. And we find that diseases we had thought were irreversible actually aren't.
Yeah, I'm thinking about Kelly Turner. She was a speaker in the 2017 Food Revolution Summit. She's a PhD researcher who's studied thousands of cases of what she calls radical remissions. These are people who were given a serious and, in most instances, a terminal cancer diagnosis. In many cases, they were told there was no remaining treatment option worth attempting. And yet, in all of these cases, they later found a complete reversal of the disease. Now, it would be easy to look at these cases of radical remission and call them miracles. And in many ways, they were. But the truth is that there was more to it than that, because nearly every one of the thousands of radical remission survivors that Dr. Turner studied had certain things in common. And one of those things was that in almost every single case, they had radically changed their diet by reducing or eliminating sugar, meat, dairy products, and refined foods in order to help themselves heal. If it's possible for some of us to receive a diagnosis of terminal cancer and yet triumph over the disease, then maybe the healing powers we possess are greater than we ever imagined.
Indeed. And I wonder if the same thing might be true on a macro level. If it's possible for a plant-powered whole foods diet to achieve such wonderful and amazing results for the physical body, to put the body in a state of grace in that healing is happening faster than injury, might the same be true about the biosphere? What would happen if we started growing food using organic and regenerative agriculture techniques? What would happen if we stopped using a stupendously high percentage of the entire landmass of the planet to produce meat and dairy products? What if we stopped spraying our agricultural land with neurotoxic poisons and started to use the growing methods developed by agroecology that take carbon out of the atmosphere and sequester it into the soil?
I'd like to find out.
I would too. I really would. And if we did these things, would we see a healthier planet? If we allowed the earth to heal by no longer inflicting so much damage on it, could we return the earth to a state of grace? Does the earth hold healing and restorative capacities that we can barely imagine, but that can only be manifest if and when we change our diets and lifestyles and how we grow our food so that we live in harmony with the web of life and the whole earth community instead of causing it relentless harm?
Oh, I think it does. And I think one of the ways that we can bring more grace into our lives and into our world starts with gratitude. There's an old saying that she who forgets the language of gratitude can never be on speaking terms with happiness. Earlier today, before we started this conversation, I asked if you'd be willing to share a particular and profound story in this finale, and you said you would. I think now would be the perfect time for it. It's a story about finding gratitude in one of the most unlikely places. I think our participants will find it very moving.
Okay, I'd be glad to share that now. The story begins one day in Iowa in the mid-1980s when I met a particular gentleman. And I use that term, gentleman, frankly, only because I'm trying to be polite, for that is certainly not how I saw him at the time. He owned and ran what he called a pork production facility. I would have called it a pig Auschwitz. The conditions were brutal. The pigs were confined in cages that were barely larger than their own bodies, with the cages stacked on top of each other in tiers 3 high. The sides and the bottoms of the cages were steel slats, so excrement from the animals in the upper and middle tiers dropped through the slats onto the animals below. The owner of this nightmare weighed, I'm sure, at least 240 pounds, but what was even more impressive about his appearance was that his body language was so rigid and so tight that he seemed to be made out of concrete. But I wasn't about to divulge my opinions of him or his operation because I was undercover. I was visiting slaughterhouses and feedlots to learn what I could about modern meat production. So I told the pig farmer matter-of-factly that I was a researcher writing about animal agriculture, which I was, and asked if he would mind speaking with me for a few minutes so that I might have the benefit of his knowledge. In response, he grunted a few words that I truly couldn't decipher, but I gathered meant that I could ask him some questions and he would show me around for a few minutes. When we entered one of the warehouses that housed his pigs, I was immediately struck by what I can only call an overpowering olfactory experience. The place just reeked like you would not believe of ammonia and hydrogen sulfide and the other noxious gases that were the products of the animals' wastes. And as nauseating as the stench was for me, I wondered what it must be like for the animals. The cells that detect scent are known as ethmoidal cells, and pigs, like dogs, have nearly 200 times the concentration of these cells in their noses as humans do. In a natural setting, they're able, while rooting around in the earth, to detect the scent of an edible root through the dirt itself. Now, given any kind of a chance, pigs will never soil their own nests, for they're actually quite clean animals, despite the reputation we have unfairly given them. But here, they had no contact with the earth, and their noses were beset by the unceasing odor of their own urine and feces, multiplied 1,000 times by the accumulated wastes of the other pigs, unfortunate enough to be caged in that warehouse. I was in the building only for a few minutes, and the longer I remained in there, the more desperately I wanted to leave. But the pigs were prisoners there, barely able to take a single step, forced to endure this stench and almost completely immobile 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and with no time off, I can assure you, for holidays.
Oh, it sounds absolutely horrendous. What happened next?
Well, after about 15 minutes, I'd had enough and I was preparing to leave. But then something happened, something that changed my life forever, and as it turned out, his too. It began when his wife came out from the farmhouse and invited me to stay for dinner. The pig farmer turned to me and announced, "The wife would like you to stay for dinner." He always called her the wife, by the way, which led me to deduce that he was not, apparently, on the leading edge of feminist thought in the world today.
Apparently not.
I don't know whether you've ever done something without having a clue why. And to this day, I couldn't tell you what prompted me to do what I did, but I said yes, I'd be delighted, and I did stay for dinner, though I didn't eat the pork they served. The excuse I gave was that my doctor was worried about my cholesterol. I didn't say that I would never even think of eating the flesh of an animal raised in a facility like that, nor that my cholesterol was 125. I was trying to be polite and trying to be an appropriate dinner guest. The couple and their 2 sons, who were also at the table, were, I could see, being nice to me, giving me dinner and all. And it was gradually becoming clear to me that, along with all the rest of it, they could be, in their way, decent people. I asked myself, if they were in my town traveling and I had chanced to meet them, would I have invited them to dinner? Not likely, not at all. Yet here they were, being as hospitable to me as they could. So I had to admit it, much as I detested how the pigs were treated, this pig farmer and his family were being kind to me.
It must have been a pretty interesting dinner. What was the conversation like around the table?
Well, honestly, I felt it to be a little awkward. I knew that if we were to scratch the surface, we could easily find ourselves in conflict. But since that was not a direction in which I wanted to go, as the meal went along, I sought to keep things on an even keel. And perhaps they sensed it too, for among us, we managed to see that the conversation remained consistently and resolutely shallow. We were actually doing rather well at keeping the conversation superficial and far from any topic around which conflict might occur, or so I thought. But then suddenly, out of nowhere, it seemed to me, the man pointed at me forcefully with his finger and then snarled in a voice that I must say truly frightened me. "Sometimes I wish you animal rights people would just drop dead." Now, how on earth he knew I had any affinity to animal rights, I will never know. I had painstakingly avoided any mention of any such thing. But I do know that my stomach tightened immediately into a knot when he said that. And to make matters worse, at that moment, right after he spoke, his two sons leapt from the table, tore into the den, slammed the door behind them, and turned the TV on loud. And at the same moment, his wife nervously picked up some dishes, scurried into the kitchen, and I watched the door close behind her, and I heard the water begin running, and I had a very sinking sensations in my stomach. There was no mistaking it, left me alone with him.
Oh,
I was, to put it bluntly, terrified. And under the circumstances, I felt like a wrong move could be disastrous.
uh-huh.
I had no idea how to respond, but I finally asked him, "What are they saying that's so upsetting to you?" Notice the word they. I was trying very hard at that moment to disassociate myself from the animal rights movement, a force in our society of which he, evidently, was not overly fond. "They accuse me of mistreating my stock," he growled. "Well, why would they say a thing like that?" I answered, knowing full well, of course, why they would, but thinking mostly about my own survival. His reply, to my surprise, while angry, was actually quite articulate. He told me precisely what animal rights groups were saying about operations like his, and exactly why they were opposed to his way of doing things. And then, without pausing, he launched into a tirade about how they didn't know anything about the business he was in, and why couldn't they mind their own business. As he spoke, I felt the knot in my stomach beginning to relax, because it was becoming clear, and I was glad of it, that he meant me no harm, but just needed to vent. Part of his frustration, it seemed, was that even though he didn't like doing some of the things he did to the animals, cooping them up in such small cages, using so many drugs, taking the babies away from their mothers so quickly after their births, he didn't see that he had any choice. He would be at a disadvantage and unable to compete economically if he didn't do things that way. And this is how it's done today, he told me, and he had to do it too. He didn't like it, but he liked even less being blamed for doing what he had to do in order to feed his family.
Yeah. That is such a common dynamic. Farmers have to do things they don't like, or else the marketplace can drive them out of business. And you've shared this family didn't have much extra.
That's very true. And in fact, almost despite myself, I began to grasp the poignancy of this family's predicament. Looking around, it was obvious that they were having a hard time making ends meet. Things were threadbare. This family was on the edge. Raising pigs apparently was the only way that he knew how to make a living. So he did it, even though, as was becoming evident the more he talked, he didn't like one bit the direction modern hog farming was going. At times, as he spoke about how much he hated the factory methods of pork production, he reminded me of the very animal rights people who a few minutes before he said he wished would drop dead. And then something amazing happened.
Oh, what was that?
Okay, here I am with him, and we're talking, when suddenly he looks really troubled. He slumps over, his head is in his hands. There's a sense of something awful having happened. Has he had a heart attack or a stroke? I'm finding it hard to breathe. I'm finding it hard to think clearly. What's happening? I ask him. It takes him a while to answer, but finally he does. I'm relieved that he's able to speak, although what he says brings no clarity at all to the situation. "It doesn't matter," he says, "and I don't want to talk about it." And as he speaks, he makes a motion with his hand as if he were pushing something away. A few minutes pass, and I find myself feeling profound grief, though I have no idea why. Finally, he looks at me, and I notice his eyes are teary. "You're right," he says. Now, I, of course, always like to be told that I'm right, but in this instance, I don't have the foggiest idea what he's talking about. But then he continues. "No animal," he says, "should be treated like that, especially hogs. Do you know that they're intelligent animals? They're even friendly if you treat them right. Not that I do." There are tears welling up in his eyes. And now he tells me that he has just remembered something that happened in his childhood, something he hasn't thought of for many years. He grew up, he tells me, on a small farm in rural Missouri, the old-fashioned kind, where animals ran around with barnyards and pastures, and where the animals all had names. He was an only child, the son of a powerful father who ran things with an iron fist. With no brothers or sisters, he often felt lonely, but found companionship among the animals on the farm, particularly several dogs who were like friends to him. And he tells me, and this I'm quite surprised to hear, he had a pet pig.
Huh.
And he proceeds to tell me about this pig. And as he does so, it's as if he's becoming a different person. Whereas before he had been speaking primarily in a monotone, now his voice grows lively. There's something fresh taking place. In the summer, he tells me, and there's now genuine happiness in his voice as he's going on about this, he would sleep in the barn. It was cooler there than in the house, and the pig, his pet pig, would come over and sleep alongside him, asking fondly to have her belly rubbed, which he was glad to do. And also in the summer, this pig loved to swim along with him in their pond.
Oh.
So I'm listening to this hog farmer tell me these stories about his pet pig from his childhood. And I'm thoroughly enjoying both myself and him, and rather astounded at how things are transpiring when once again it happens. Once again, there's a look of defeat and deep pain sweeping across his face. Something in him, I somehow know, is struggling to make its way toward life through anguish and pain, but I don't know what it is, and I don't know how to help him. "What happened to your pig?" I ask. He sighs, and it's as if the whole world's pain is contained in that sigh. Then slowly he speaks. "My father made me butcher it." "Did you?" I ask. "I ran away, but they found me." "What happened?" "My father gave me a choice." "What was that?" "He told me, you either slaughter that animal or you're no longer my son." Some choice, I think, feeling the weight of how fathers have so often trained their sons not to care, to be what they call brave and strong, but what so often turns out to be callous and emotionally numb. "So I did it," he says, and now his tears really begin to flow. "I'm touched and I'm humbled. This man, whom I had judged to be without human feeling, is weeping in front of me, a stranger. This man, whom I had seen as unfeeling and even heartless, is actually someone who cares and deeply. How wrong, how profoundly and terribly wrong I had been." In the minutes that follow, it becomes clear to me what's been happening. This pig farmer has been remembering something that was so painful, that was such a profound trauma, that he just wasn't able to cope with it. And when it had happened, and something had shut down in him, it was just too much to bear. Somewhere in his young, developing, formative psyche, he had made a resolution never to be that hurt again, never to be that vulnerable again. And so he built a wall around the place where the pain had occurred, which was the place where his love and connection to that pig was located, which was his heart. And now here he was, slaughtering pigs for a living, still, I imagine, seeking his father's approval. God, what we men will do, I thought, to get our father's acceptance. I had thought he was a cold and closed human being, but now I saw the truth. His rigidity was not a result of a lack of feeling, as I had thought it was, but quite the opposite. It was a sign of how sensitive he was underneath. For if he had not been so sensitive, he would not have been that hurt, and he would not have needed to put up so massive a wall. The tension in his body that was so apparent to me upon first meeting him, the body armor that he carried, bespoke how hurt he had been and how much capacity for feeling he carried still beneath it all. I had judged him and done so, to be honest, mercilessly. But for the rest of the evening, I sat with him, humbled and grateful for whatever it was in him that had been strong enough to force this long-buried and deeply painful memory to the surface. We talked that night for hours about many things. I was, after all that had happened, concerned for him. The gap between his feelings and his lifestyle seemed so tragically vast. What could he do? This was all he knew. He didn't have a high school diploma. He was only partially literate. Who would hire him if he tried to do something else? When finally I left that evening, these questions were very much on my mind, and I had no answers to them. Somewhat flippantly, I tried to joke about it. Maybe you'll grow broccoli or something, I said. He stared at me, clearly not comprehending what I might be talking about, and it occurred to me briefly that he might not know what broccoli was. But we parted that night as friends, and we remained friends as the years went by.
Wow. Do you know what happened to him?
Yes, he passed away some years ago, but I'll always carry him in my heart. A few years after our meeting, he sold his operation in Iowa and moved back to Missouri, where he bought a small farm. And for some years there, he grew vegetables that he sold at a local farmer's market. He had pigs, all right, but only a few, and he didn't cage them, and he didn't kill them. Instead, he had a contract with local schools. They brought the kids out in buses on field trips to his farm for his, what he called, Pet a Pig program. And he showed them how intelligent pigs are and how friendly they can be if you treat them right, which he was now doing. He even arranged it so the kids got a chance to give a pig a belly rub if they wanted to do that. Do you see why I carry this man with me in my heart? Do you see why even now, all these years later, he's still a hero to me?
Oh, goodness. Yes, I sure do. It's an absolutely amazing story. This is a man who gave up the only livelihood he'd ever known, and he dared to leap. He risked everything to leave what was killing his spirit, even though he had no idea what was next. And in some remarkable way, your open hearted curiosity, your willingness to meet him in his world, helped to open the doorway for him to step forward. What lessons do you take from all this?
Oh, so many. When I look at many of the things happening in our world today, I sometimes fear we're not going to make it. I can get tricked into thinking there aren't enough of us to turn the tide. But then I remember how wrong I was about the big farmer when I first met him, and I realized that there are heroes afoot everywhere. Only I can't recognize them because I think they're supposed to look or act a certain way or think a certain way. How blinded I can be by my own beliefs. When I first met him, I would not have thought it possible that I would ever say the things I'm saying now. But this only goes to show how amazing life can be and how you never really know what to expect. And to me, this is grace. To have the veils lifted from our eyes so that we can recognize and serve the goodness in each other. Other people may wish for great riches or for ecstatic journeys to mystical planes. But to me, this is the deeper magic of human life.
Oh, what an incredibly beautiful story. And thank you for the context and the lessons you're pulling from it. And thank you for being the kind of a man who could live it. One of the things that I love about the food revolution is that it's a tangible way we can all bring more grace into our lives and into our world. And it's something we can all participate in. You don't have to wait for the food industry or the medical industry or government to make conscious or healthy food choices.
Speaking of government, we're about to be heading into an election year in the United States. Ocean, can you share with us a few of the top policy changes we could make that would bring more grace into public life, that would make a huge difference to the health of millions of people?
I'd love to. To me, this is about how we land the plane, how we actually make this thing happen. And there is so much hope because there are so many things we really can do. For one thing, we could double the value of the SNAP program benefits, also known as food stamps, when they're used to buy fruits and vegetables. This has already been piloted in a program called Wholesome Wave. It's now reaching 500,000 people. And guess what? People in the program are eating more fruits and vegetables, and they're healthier because of it. I'd also love to end the subsidies of commodity crops and the tens of billions of dollars of taxpayer money that are right now bringing down the price of factory farmed animal products and high fructose corn syrup. If we're going to subsidize anything, I think it should be healthy food. Let's stop using taxpayer money to subsidize Doritos and burgers and Wonder Bread. And let's start subsidizing fresh veggies and fresh fruits so that everybody, regardless of how much money they have, can eat healthful food. And I also want to see us mandate nutritional education as an important part of what is taught in medical school. And I'd like to see the National Board of Medical Examiners, which provides the tests that are given to graduating physicians before they can get their medical license, ensure that at least 10% of the questions on those exams relate to nutrition. That way, the medical schools, which teach to the test, would have to include nutrition in their curricula. Then doctors would be equipped to help their patients stay well so they wouldn't even have to get sick in the first place. And I also want to see a switch in the regulatory burden for organic farmers. See, right now, if you want to grow food organically, you have to pay extra if you want organic certification. So organic farmers actually have a higher regulatory burden than farmers who are spraying neurotoxic pesticides on their crops. This is part of the reason that organic foods cost more. It's kind of like we're being fined for wearing our seatbelts. And you know something else? I'd love to see the factory farming system completely dismantled. I think that keeping animals in deplorable conditions, like the pigs we were just hearing about a moment ago, feeding them grain and soy that are wasted because it takes between 4 and 12 pounds of feed to produce 1 pound of meat, creating an environmental disaster, and then giving ourselves heart attacks is kind of a bad combination. So I'd love to see that system come to an end. And if we're going to eat meat, let's eat less of it, and let's make sure it's pasture-raised or grass-fed and comes from animals that saw the sun, that ate a natural diet, and that got to run around like animals should be able to do. Let's make sure it's as humane and as sustainable as it possibly can be.
Those are all great ideas, Ocean. So what I want to ask you now is this. When are you going to announce your candidacy for president in 2020?
Well, here's what I want to say about that. So the truth is that every one of us gets to be the president of our own lives. I think we sometimes give too much power to political leaders, and we forget that the real power of our destiny lies much more in our hands than we often realize. That's what we have the most say over. So yes, absolutely, vote at the ballot box. Yes, work for the candidates you want to hold office and set public policy. But don't ever forget to vote with your knife and fork, to vote with how you treat other people, to vote with how you live day in and day out, because that's really what changes the world. Martin Luther King said once, "Our lives begin to end the day we're silent about things that matter." Well, I'm here to add that what you eat really, truly matters. The food revolution is growing fast, and there is room for every single one of us to take our part and to work together, because together we are shifting the course of history.
We are. That is so true. You know, sometimes I can feel like I'm just a tiny drop in a bucket, and it's a pretty huge bucket, in fact. But when we work together, we become more than drops. We can become the tide of history turning. And now I want to close with a prayer. It's a prayer that I've used to end all 10 of my books and every Food Revolution Summit we've held so far. It's a simple prayer, and it lives deep in my heart. May all be fed. May all be healed. May all be loved.
May all be fed. May all be healed. May all be loved. This is Ocean Robbins and John Robbins and the entire team of Food Revolution Network, thanking you so much for joining us in this summit and for all the ways that you participate in standing for healthy, ethical, and sustainable food for all. Thank you so much to my dad and colleague, John Robbins, and to you for joining in the summit finale. And now, as we move into the last wrap-up of the 2019 Food Revolution Summit, I'm going to share and respond to a few of the incredibly moving comments and questions that are being posted on the broadcast page. I'm going to give away one more empowerment package, and I'm going to share a finale completion message to send you forward with. Sherry Moran said, "What a profound journey. Demonstrates how effective simply listening and not judging can be. An amazing therapy session allowed the man to get to his deepest feelings and change his life, and change the life of the listener, too. Listening to the point of really hearing. Beautiful. Yes, Sherry, indeed. And a lot of people have been responding to that story my dad shared about the pig farmer and that epic dinner. Gwenda Woodbury said, John, your story about the fake pig farmer has me in tears. So many people are trapped in their lives. Thank you for reminding us what a wonderful ending to his story, too. Michelle Carpenter said, this amazing story about the pig farmer is one of the reasons why these finales have always been my favorite. I've never heard this story before, and it's a very tiny example of the beautiful heart of John Robbins. Suzanne Clow said, your story made me cry happy tears. What a great story about the pig farmer. Don Cross said, amazing story, amazing father and son. Great job. Kristen Riley said, John, Ocean, and the team, thank you for another fabulous summit. It has been an oasis of sanity in these times of utter craziness. You and the wonderful speakers show us that good is being done and encourage us not to despair. And thank you to the courageous people who shared their stories. Thank you, Kristen. And yes, there is a lot of craziness in our world right now. No doubt about it. But there's also sanity. There's also hope and possibility. There's also truth. And we're here to celebrate that and to stand in that and to apply that. And I'm so glad that you are here with us in this journey. We heard from Carolyn Gamble, who said, thank you for all of the inspiring interviews. I made sure to get the empowerment package to keep these words of encouragement close by. Wonderful, Carolyn. I am so glad you did. We thank you for your support, and we thank you for your partnership. And we're so glad that you'll have these resources with you now and in the future. Gina Stewart said, what an eye-opening and life-changing experience the summit has been for me. Through the speakers interviewed and you, Ocean and John, at least one epiphany, if not numerous epiphanies, happened for each one of us, and I thank you for all that. Thank you for your passion, drive, selflessness, and sharing of your gifts and knowledge so freely. The wisdom I have gained will assist me in taking control of my life and ridding my body of the ailments that have plagued it since my 2006 breast cancer diagnosis. Chemo, radiation, meds, and multiple surgeries have wreaked havoc on my body. I now see a way forward that renews my hope of living a healthier and more fulfilling life while here on earth. Blessings to you and your families. Thank you, Gina, and blessings to you as well. And I'm sorry you've gone through these hardships, and I'm so glad that you're getting resources and support now to help you to truly heal. What I want to remind you of, what I want to remind everybody listening of, is that our bodies are extraordinarily resilient. They have incredible capacity to heal, to replenish, and to regenerate. And it's incredible with all of the abuse that we can put them through and all of the challenges that they go through, from environmental toxins on down. It's incredible how capable your body is to heal not just broken bones, but all sorts of maladies. Things that science doesn't even know exist yet are happening to us right now that we know how to respond to resourcefully and creatively. So I know that when you treat your body right and when you feed it right, you create the conditions out of which grace is possible, out of which healing is possible. And I'm so glad that you're getting resources to support you in that journey. Kathy Beveridge said, please, what is your input on drinking kombucha, as it is said to be good for the gut bacteria, but is made with sugar? Well, Kathy, we wrote a whole article on this recently on the Food Revolution Network blog. We actually post articles on a lot of the topics that folks are asking about here, foodrevolution.org. And the kombucha article, I'll give you the quick highlights. Bottom line is kombucha is made by fermenting with a certain particular bacteria collection, fermenting green or black tea and sugar, and then adding in some flavorings, typically sometimes, anything from cayenne or turmeric to passion fruit or whatever, to it at the end. And the bottom line is that there are a lot of different ways to make kombucha. The use of green tea or black tea is beneficial. There's a lot of wonderful polyphenols and antioxidants in there. And the fermentation process produces some bacteria, some of which is probably very good for your digestive tract. On the negative side, there's sugar involved. And of course, the bacteria consume some of it, but not all of it. A lot of kombuchas are really a little bit like soft drinks. And so if it tastes sweet, it probably is sugary, and therefore probably you should think of it more like a soft drink than like a health drink. But some of them are less sweet, and those are probably more healthy. All that said, they're very acidic. And so some dentists are concerned about the impact of kombucha on dental health. So if you're going to drink it, I recommend following it up with a swish of water and maybe even consuming a xylitol mint or something, which will help balance the acidity in your mouth. And I drink kombucha personally from time to time. Other people I know, including my dad, do not. It's a personal choice, I suppose, to see what feels right to your body. But I think of it as a treat, not as a health food, personally. Faye Kalauris said, is produce from hydroponic gardening as nutritious as food grown in soil? Well, Faye, the bottom line is it depends on the nutrient solution in which hydroponic vegetables are grown. But hydroponically grown vegetables can be, according to the research that I have seen, as nutritious as those grown in soil. Plants make their own vitamins, so vitamin levels tend to be similar whether a vegetable is grown hydroponically or in the earth. And the mineral content can vary in hydroponic crops depending on the fertilizer that's used. But there is something a little bit weird about it, I think. I believe that plants grow in dirt and with sunlight, and that's the optimal way that nature intended. So I tend to be wary when humans come up with newfangled ways of improving on nature. But there are climates where you can't grow food in the winter because it's too cold. And so when you get greenhouses going and you go with hydroponics, it can make sense. I was in Iceland last summer, and some of the food there is grown hydroponically. And they're eating a lot more vegetables because they can grow food natively than if they had to import them from far corners of the earth. So I think it can be part of the puzzle. And I'm not completely averse to eating hydroponically grown vegetables, but I'm wary, and there can be a lot of chemicals used in the process, which is not something I'm a fan of. So we're hearing just so many amazing responses, and I want to invite you to go ahead and post more of them. If you have been touched by something you've heard, if you're learning something new, if there's a particular epiphany that has inspired you the most in this summit, go ahead and share that on the broadcast page. If the food revolution has touched your life, if you have a food revolution transformation story, we'd love to hear that too. And of course, refresh the comments using the button you see there so you can see the most recent ones that have been submitted. We are now nearing the end of an extraordinary Food Revolution Summit. We've reached hundreds of thousands of people. We've helped to deepen a global revolution in the way that we grow and process and prepare and eat food. And I want to thank you so much for being part of it, because we really are changing lives together. And I want to acknowledge none of this would be possible without all the people who are investing in our work and in their own health by getting the empowerment package. And I want to say again what's in there. It gives you the entire summit for life, all the recordings, all the transcripts, all of the action checklists, which give distillation of some of the top takeaways from each of these presentations, and more than $4,000 worth of bonuses that are specially curated from our speakers and partners. Plus, you get to support our work when we're standing for a food revolution. This year, we are advancing campaigns to get nutrition taught in medical school, to get routine use of antibiotics out of factory farms, and to promote planting fruit and nut trees in low-income communities. And we're developing new projects and initiatives with our goal of advancing this movement and supporting you more deeply in your food revolution. When you get an empowerment package, you're helping make all of that possible. You're helping us spread the word and offer new educational resources in the future. And you're supporting your own health so you can own this for life and share it with the people you love. And I'll say again, as I'm sure you know, it's available for a huge discount between now and the end of the summit here. So I want to invite you, if you're on the fence, if you're thinking about it, if you're interested in it, today is an excellent time to step forward and say, yes, I want to own this for life and invest in our mission and your health. Heather Emmons said, thank you so much for an amazing summit filled with tons of valuable information. I've been playing portions of the interview replays from my 8-year-old daughter whenever we've been riding in the car together, and it sparked a whole new world of conversation for us. And she started asking for more fruits and vegetables, and I couldn't be happier. It's so priceless, the effect that even just these 9 days have had on me and my family. I will be forever grateful to all of you for this experience and for offering such groundbreaking work. I could listen to those replays all day, every day. This has been such a motivating and invigorating time. I wish it never had to end. Well, Heather, thank you. That is so heartening and heartwarming and beautiful. And I love that you're sharing it with your daughter. And I love that she's interested in vegetables even more now. And I hope that continues. And we don't want it to end for you. And we want you to be able to listen to these anytime or place you like. So we're going to gift you with an empowerment package. So you'll have it all for life. Congratulations. And I hope you can share more interviews with your daughter and more car rides and more times to come and provoke more conversations and more vegetables in your family. I want to also take a moment right now to honor and celebrate our farmers and our farm workers. My dad talked earlier, of course, about the pig farmer that he spent that time with and that extraordinary story. And there are all kinds of farmers and farm workers, some of them growing food organically and some of them growing food in very miserable conditions, but all of them are toiling with long hours to try to bring food to our tables. And their livelihood depends on the sun, the weather, the water, the soil, and of course market forces utterly beyond their control. Their labor literally enables us to eat, and a lot of them face tremendous pressure in the direction of mechanization, pesticides, and treating our farms and farm animals like factories. In that context, there are also millions of farmers, many of them operating on a pretty small scale, often with very low margins, who are doing incredible work. Their labor is a labor of love, and they seek to maintain a balanced and sustainable ecosystem and to feed us healthy, life-giving food. I want to express gratitude to everybody who works that we may eat, and particularly to those who work that we may eat healthy, nourishing food that's produced with respect for the earth and the future of life on this planet. Let's all just give thanks, and when you interact with farmers or think about where your food comes from, let's just take a moment of gratitude to all of them, because we literally owe them our lives. You know, the food revolution is about what you eat and how it impacts your life and your health, but it's about a lot more. And I want to invite you to imagine with me for a moment the implications down the road. Where is your life headed? When you look back from the end of your life, who do you want to have been, and how do you want to have lived? How do you want to have cared for your body, and how will your food choices have shaped the course of your destiny? Right now, in this very moment, as we near completion of the 2019 Food Revolution Summit, you have a choice. You can continue on the course that you've been on, and that will take you where you were headed. And if that works for you, then that's completely okay. At the same time, if something more is possible, if some bigger or better or healthier opportunity is open to you, then now is a moment, right now, when you have a chance to step forward into the life that could be. And I ask you then, what suffering or disease might you not have to experience? What is it worth to you to have your loved ones have the benefit of you, healthy and well, for a long, full life? You know, there's the saying that he who has his health has 1,000 dreams. He without it has but one, which is to get it back. When you don't have your health, you don't have much, and you might not even have life for long. But if you do, then what is that worth to you? What does that give to your ability to do what you love and to have the opportunity, perhaps, to truly discover and to live what you were born for? Healthy food is the foundation of a healthy life, and a healthy life can be foundational to a life of meaning, of purpose, of contribution. What's that worth? And there's also more. I want to invite you to think for a moment about your loved ones, about your family, your colleagues, your friends, about everyone you care about. Do you know anyone right now who might be struggling with excess weight or even obesity, or with high blood pressure, diabetes, who might be fearing or facing cancer? What would it be worth to you to be able to support them more deeply, or to give them the fundamental knowledge that you've gained in this summit? What would you give to be able to be a positive role model or a positive influence on the lives of the people you cherish? And of course, it gets even bigger still. Consider with me for a moment the fate of our planet. How do you feel in your heart about the reality of factory farms? What do you think it does to us as humans to be part of a species that cuts the beaks off of chickens so they won't peck each other to death after they're driven to insanity by the conditions we put them in? And what would it mean to you and to your own sense of conscience to be able to change that, to be able to vote with your life for something else, and to participate in changing the way humans relate to animals? And if you, like me, feel fear for the future of our climate, our water supply, our topsoil, our ability to feed future generations, what would it be worth to you if you knew you could participate in a meaningful way in a future in which all could have access to healthy food, in which our climate was stable and there was enough water to go around? How would it feel to live with a sense of deep satisfaction to know that your life was making a contribution to the world you want for yourself and for all that you love? Right here and right now, you and I and all of us in this summit, and frankly every human being alive, face a choice point. So does our entire species. We know where the path of factory farms and chemicals and antibiotics and added sugars and processed junk lead. And we also know that something else is possible. We know that when we bring our food choices into alignment with our values, with what we most want for our lives, something extraordinary happens. Your health can improve, sometimes dramatically. You can lose weight, have more energy, have better sleep, more stable hormones. You can also feel more energy showing up in a kind of ebullience, in a sense of joy, in a feeling from deep inside that you are on the right path. Eating becomes an act of love for your body. Food becomes more than a commodity. It becomes a community, a web of relationships. And as you find your place in that web, there's a kind of congruency that takes root. You're more at home in your body and on your planet. When you eat more sustainable food, you grow in your sense of connection to the whole Earth community. When you eat more healthy food, you're sending your body a signal to every cell in your body that says, I love you, I care about you, you are worth protecting. The food revolution isn't an all or nothing proposition. It's more of a journey, I think, than a destination. But every step on the journey is a step towards greater vitality, greater joy, greater congruency, and more meaningful service. The 2019 Food Revolution Summit is coming now towards a close, but the work and the connecting and the growing and the learning are going to keep right on going. I invite you to post your comments, your top takeaways, your questions, your struggles, and to engage with others right on the broadcast page. Remember to use that button that's there so you can see the most recent comments that have been shared. And I want to invite you and really ask you to check out the empowerment package so you can own this all for life and support our mission going forward. And please stay tuned for future emails from us that will tell you more about exciting opportunities to be part of this revolution and resources to help you put it all into action in your life. This now concludes the 2019 Food Revolution Summit. But our work is just getting started. On behalf of myself and my dad and colleague, John Robbins, on behalf of the Food Revolution Network and our entire team that has been working tirelessly round the clock to bring this to you, on behalf of all of our speakers and organizers, and on behalf of you and all that you love, I thank you so much for joining us and for all the ways you participate in building a more healthy, sustainable, humane, and loving world. This is Ocean Robbins, signing off for this summit and thanking you again. At Food Revolution Network, our mission is healthy, ethical, and sustainable food for everyone who eats. We want kids to learn about healthy food in school. We want doctors to learn how nutrition impacts health in medical school. We want the routine use of antibiotics banned from factory farms. We want a world where everyone, regardless of their ethnic or economic background, has knowledge of and access to healthy food for their family. We want a world in which heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, obesity, and diabetes are rare, and in which vibrant health is the status quo. We're spreading the word and standing for change. And with every empowerment package purchased, we make a donation to Trees for the Future, enabling them to plant an organic fruit or nut tree in a low-income community. Join this movement and support this mission